They say rejection kills slower than poison, but cleaner than a blade. Leora had always known she was different. Not special, different. The kind of different that made mothers pull their pups closer when she walked by. The kind that turned her name into a whisper, a warning, a curse muttered behind closed doors. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here, welcome to the pack. I'm so glad you're here with me today. Quick question before we dive into this story. Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. I love seeing where my pack members are tuning in from. And hey, if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button because trust me, you're going to want to see how this story ends. Now, let's get into it. The night air tasted like iron and cedar as Leora stood in the center of the ceremonial circle, every pair of eyes in the silver fong pack burning into her skin. The bonfire crackled behind her, casting long shadows that made the wolves surrounding her look more like monsters than protectors. She was 20 years old and had never shifted. Not once. In a world where your wolf defined your worth, Leora had none. Her body was too fragile, her bones too brittle. She'd broken her wrist twice just from training, if you could call the pitiful attempts at combat training. The pack healers said her wolf was dormant. The kinder members said she was a late bloomer. The rest called her broken. But tonight, none of that mattered. Because tonight, the moon goddess herself had spoken. Elder Marin stood at the edge of the circle, her silver hair gleaming in the firelight, her voice ringing out across the clearing with an authority that silenced even the wind. The goddess has revealed the sacred bond, Marin announced, her ancient eyes fixed on Leora with something that looked almost like pity. Leora of the Silver Fong Pack and Alpha Garrick Thorn. The words fell like stones into still water. Fated mates. Leora's heart stopped. Around her, the pack erupted. Gasps. Murmurs. A few choked laughs quickly swallowed down. She could feel the disbelief radiating from every direction, thick and suffocating. And standing across from her, tall and devastating in the firelight, was Garrick. Alpha Garrick Thorn, 6'4" of raw power and lethal grace. Eyes the color of a winter storm. A jaw carved from stone and a presence that commanded submission without a single word. He was everything an alpha should be, strong, cunning, feared, and respected. And he was looking at her like she'd just stabbed him. Leora's breath came in short, shallow gasps. She wanted to run. Wanted to disappear. But her feet were rooted to the ground, her eyes locked on his, searching desperately for something: acceptance, warmth, recognition. Anything. His expression was unreadable. Cold. Garrick. Her voice came out barely above a whisper, but in the silence it carried. I know this isn't what you expected, but the goddess made a mistake. His voice was ice. The world tilted. Leora felt the ground shift beneath her, felt her chest crack open as if he'd reached in and torn her heart out with his bare hands. What? The word escaped her lips, broken and small. Garrick stepped forward, and the crowd parted for him like water. He moved with that predatory grace, every inch of him radiating dominance, power, control. When he stopped in front of her, she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Those storm gray eyes were hard. Resolved. Alpha Garrick Thorn of the Silver Fong Pack, he said, his voice loud enough for every wolf to hear, reject you, Leora, as my mate and Luna. The bond snapped. It felt like lightning tearing through her chest, burning her from the inside out. Leora gasped, stumbling backward, her hand flying to her heart as pain, white-hot and unbearable, radiated through every nerve. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The world blurred around her, the faces of the pack melting into a sea of judgment and disgust. She heard laughter. Heard someone say, of course he rejected her. What did she expect? Garrick's face remained impassive. He didn't flinch. Didn't soften. He just stood there, watching her fall apart, and did nothing. Garrick, please, she hated how her voice broke. hated the tears burning in her eyes. Why? For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in his gaze. Regret, maybe. Guilt. But then it was gone. You're weak, Leora, he said quietly, so only she could hear. Aluna needs to be strong. You'd be a liability. A weakness. And I can't afford that. Each word was a blade. She wanted to scream. Wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was more than her wolf, that the goddess wouldn't have chosen her if she wasn't meant to be his. But the words died in her throat. Because deep down, she'd always believed it too. That she was nothing. That she didn't belong. That she was a mistake. Garrick turned his back on her and walked away. The crowd swallowed him, and just like that, it was over. Leora stood alone in the center of the circle, trembling, broken, and utterly destroyed. No one came to her. No one offered comfort. They just stared. She left that night. No goodbyes. No explanations. She simply walked into the forest, past the boundary markers, past the safety of pack lands, and into the forbidden territory beyond. The place where rogues and exiles roamed. Where the wild things hunted. Where wolves went to die. Leora didn't care. If the world wanted her gone, then she'd disappear. And maybe, just maybe, she'd finally stop feeling anything at all. But here's the thing about the broken. They either stay shattered, or they rebuild themselves into something the world has never seen before. And Leora? She was about to become a nightmare. 3 years earlier. Before the rejection. Before the pain. Before everything shattered. Leora had been different, yes, but she hadn't always been broken. She remembered a time when her mother was still alive, when the small cottage at the edge of pack territory felt like home instead of exile. Her mother, Alara, had been an Omega too, but a rare one, gentle, kind, and blessed with a gift for healing that made her invaluable to the pack. You have a purpose, little moon, her mother used to whisper, brushing Leora's dark hair back from her face. The goddess doesn't make mistakes. Your wolf will come when you're ready. When she's ready. But Alara died when Leora was 17. A rogue attack on the border. She'd been tending to wounded warriors when a second wave hit. She'd saved 3 lives that night. And lost her own. After that, everything changed. Without her mother's protection, without her mother's value, Leora became invisible. Then she became a burden. Then she became a target. The pack's healer, Marcus, was a bitter man who resented having to waste supplies on someone who couldn't even shift. The younger wolves mocked her openly. The warriors ignored her during training, leaving her to fumble through exercises alone until she inevitably injured herself. But there was one person who never treated her like she was worthless. Garrick. Back then, he wasn't alpha yet, just the heir, training under his father's brutal regime. But even as a young man, Garrick commanded respect. He was brilliant in combat, strategic in politics, and ruthless when necessary. And for some inexplicable reason, he noticed her. Your footwork is wrong, he'd said one afternoon, appearing beside her in the training yard like a shadow. The other wolves had already left, abandoning her to practice alone. Leora had frozen, her wooden practice sword trembling in her grip. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. His voice was firm but not unkind. Here. He'd stepped behind her, adjusting her stance with careful hands. Balance your weight. Anticipate the strike before it comes. You can't rely on wolf strength, so you'll need to be smarter. She turned to look at him, surprised. You think I can actually learn this? His gray eyes had met hers, and for a moment, she'd seen something in them that made her breath catch. I think you're stronger than you believe. From that day on, Garrick trained her personally. Not often, he was too busy for that, but enough that Leora began to feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't completely useless. He never made her feel weak. He pushed her, challenged her, expected more from her than anyone else ever had. And slowly, quietly, she'd fallen in love with him. She never told him, of course. What would be the point? He was the alpha heir, destined for greatness. She was nobody, a wolfless omega who could barely keep up. But she dreamed that maybe one day he'd see her as more than a charity case. Dreamed that maybe the goddess had a plan. And then, 3 years later, the goddess revealed that plan. Garrick was her fated mate. For one beautiful, heartbreaking moment, Leora had believed everything would finally make sense. That all the pain, all the loneliness, all the struggle had been leading to this. To him. But Garrick didn't see a future when he looked at her. He saw a mistake. 5 years later. Present day. The Silver Fang pack had changed. Alpha Garrick ruled with an iron fist, expanding territory, forming alliances, crushing any threat before it could take root. Under his leadership, the pack had become one of the strongest in the region. But strength came at a cost. Garrick stood in his office, staring out the window at the forest beyond, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. The moon hung low and heavy in the sky, and for reasons he couldn't explain, it made his chest ache. He hadn't thought about Leora in months. That was a lie. He thought about her every day. "You're brooding again," came a voice from the doorway. Garrick didn't turn. "I'm thinking, Nate. There's a difference." His beta, Nate Cross, stepped into the room with the easy confidence of someone who'd known Garrick since childhood. He was shorter than Garrick, but built like a brawler, with dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Thinking about her?" Nate asked, his tone carefully neutral. Garrick's jaw tightened. "No. Liar. Drop it." Nate sighed, dropping into one of the leather chairs across from Garrick's desk. "It's been 5 years, Garrick. 5 years since you rejected your fated mate and sent her running into rogue territory. You really think she's still alive out there?" Garrick's grip on the glass tightened. "She's not my problem anymore." "Right. That's why you send scouts to the border every month. That's why you lose your temper every time someone mentions the Forbidden Lands. That's why." "Enough." Garrick's voice dropped to a growl, his alpha authority pressing down on the room like a weight. Nate held up his hands in surrender, but his expression remained skeptical. "Just saying, brother. Whatever you're running from, it's catching up." Before Garrick could respond, the door burst open. Theo Kane, the pack's head warrior, stood in the doorway, his face pale and his breath coming in short gasps. "Alpha," he said urgently. "We have a problem." Garrick set down his glass, his instincts sharpening. "What kind of problem?" "The Northern Border Patrol. They're gone. Gone. Dead, Alpha. All of them. Torn apart." Theo swallowed hard. "And there's a message carved into one of the trees." Garrick's blood went cold. "What does it say?" Theo's voice was barely a whisper. "The Queen is coming." The room fell silent. Garrick's mind raced. The Queen. That's what the rogues called their leader, a mysterious figure who'd united the outcasts, the exiles, the broken wolves that no pack would take. For the past 3 years, the Rogue Queen had been a ghost story. A legend whispered around campfires. Some said she was a demon. Others said she was a former Luna driven mad by betrayal. No one knew the truth. But everyone feared her. Because wherever the Rogue Queen went, packs fell. "How many rogues are we talking about?" Nate asked, standing now, his expression grim. "Reports say at least 200, Theo said. Maybe more. They're organized, well-trained, and moving fast. They've already taken the Ember Ridge Pack and the Thorn Valley territory." Garrick's mind flashed to maps, strategies, defenses. Mobilize the warriors. Reinforce the borders. I want every able-bodied wolf ready to fight. Alpha, Theo hesitated. "There's something else." "What?" "The survivor. One of our scouts made it back. Barely. He said." Theo's voice faltered. "He said the Queen wants to speak with you. Personally." Garrick's eyes narrowed. "Did he see her?" "No. But he heard her voice." Theo's expression was haunted. He said it was the most terrifying sound he'd ever heard. Like death and beauty wrapped in one. Garrick's wolf stirred uneasily beneath his skin. Something about this felt wrong. Felt familiar. When? Garrick asked quietly. Tomorrow night. The clearing at the border. She'll come alone if you do. Nate stepped forward. This is a trap. Of course it's a trap, Garrick said. But I'm going anyway. Garrick. She's declared war on my pack, Nate. If there's even a chance I can end this before it starts, I have to take it. Nate looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew better. Once Garrick made a decision, nothing could change his mind. Fine, Nate said. But I'm coming with you. No, she said alone. And you trust a rogue's word? Garrick's smile was cold. I don't trust anyone. That night, Garrick couldn't sleep. He stood on his balcony, staring out at the forest, trying to ignore the gnawing feeling in his gut. The Rogue Queen. Why did that title make his chest tighten? Why did it feel like the ghosts of his past were finally clawing their way back to the surface? He thought of Leora. Fragile, quiet Leora, with her wide eyes and trembling hands. He'd rejected her to protect the pack. To protect himself. Because the truth was, he'd been terrified. Terrified that if he accepted her, he'd become weak. That his enemies would see her as a vulnerability and exploit it. That he'd fail as alpha because he'd be too busy protecting someone who couldn't protect herself. So he'd cut her loose. And he'd told himself it was the right choice. But sometimes, late at night, he still heard her voice. Why? He'd never answered her. Because the real answer was too painful. Because I'm a coward. Garrick closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Tomorrow, he'd meet the Rogue Queen. Tomorrow, he'd end this threat. And maybe, just maybe, he'd finally stop thinking about the girl he'd destroyed. The clearing at the border was deathly silent. Garrick arrived exactly at midnight, alone as promised, his senses on high alert. The moon hung full and luminous overhead, casting silver light across the grass and making shadows dance between the trees. He could feel eyes on him. Dozens of them, hidden in the darkness, watching his every move. Rogues. His wolf growled beneath his skin, eager for a fight, but Garrick kept himself in check. He'd come here for answers, not bloodshed. Not yet, anyway. I'm here, he called out, his voice carrying across the clearing. Show yourself. For a long moment, nothing. Then the trees moved. Not the wind, the trees themselves. Garrick's eyes widened as vines and branches twisted and parted like a living curtain, creating a pathway through the forest. The display of power was subtle but unmistakable. Earth magic. Ancient magic that hadn't been seen in the packs for generations. And then she stepped into the clearing. Garrick's heart stopped. The woman who emerged from the darkness was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. She wore black leather that hugged her frame like a second skin, her long dark hair flowing loose down her back. Her movements were fluid, predatory, every step radiating a confidence and power that made the air itself seem to bend around her. But it was her eyes that made Garrick's blood run cold. Golden eyes that glowed like molten amber in the moonlight. Eyes that he would have recognized anywhere. No, he breathed, the word barely audible. The woman smiled, and it was a cruel, beautiful thing. Hello, Garrick. Her voice was different, deeper, edged with darkness and command, but underneath it all, he heard the echo of someone he'd tried desperately to forget. Leora. She tilted her head, studying him like a predator studying prey. That name feels like a lifetime ago. Like a different person entirely. She took a step closer, and Garrick caught her scent. Wild roses and thunderstorms, familiar and foreign all at once. The wolves I lead call me queen. You can too. Garrick's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. Leora had been fragile, broken, weak. The woman standing before him radiated power that rivaled his own, that exceeded his own. How, he managed, his voice rough. How is this possible? Leora, no, the queen laughed, and the sound sent chills down his spine. You want to know how the weak little Omega you threw away became this? She spread her arms wide, and the earth beneath their feet trembled in response. You want to know what happens when you abandon someone in the place where monsters are born? Vines erupted from the ground around her, twisting and writhing like serpents, glowing with an ethereal green light. I survived, Garrick. And in surviving, I discovered something wonderful. Her golden eyes locked onto his. I was never broken. I was dormant, waiting. And the moment you severed our bond, the moment you cast me out, you broke the seal that was holding my true nature back. Garrick's throat went dry. What are you? I'm what your ancestors feared. She stepped closer, close enough now that he could see the faint scars on her neck, the marks of survival etched into her skin. I'm a child of the first moon. A bloodline so ancient, so powerful, that the Pax tried to erase us from history. She raised her hand, and the moonlight seemed to gather in her palm, coalescing into a sphere of pure silver energy. My mother sealed my abilities when I was born. She knew what the Pax did to our kind, hunted us, killed us, feared us. So she made me appear weak. Made me appear human. To protect me. Leora's expression darkened. But you rejected me anyway. The sphere of moonlight dissolved, and she lowered her hand. So I stopped hiding. Garrick's wolf was going insane inside him, torn between submission and aggression, between terror and something else, something that felt dangerously close to longing. Because despite everything, despite the power, the danger, the threat, his wolf still recognized her. Mate. Leora, he said carefully, I know I hurt you. I know what I did was what? She cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. Wrong? Cruel? Unforgivable. She laughed bitterly. You don't get to apologize, Garrick. You don't get to explain. You made your choice 5 years ago. I was trying to protect the pack. You were protecting yourself. Her shout echoed across the clearing, and the rogues hidden in the trees shifted restlessly. You were afraid that having a weak mate would make you look bad, that it would undermine your authority. So you chose your pride over your fated mate. Every word hit like a physical blow because they were all true. You're right, Garrick said quietly, and the admission clearly surprised her. You're absolutely right. I was a coward. I was selfish. And I've regretted it every single day since. Leora's eyes flashed dangerously. Regret doesn't bring back the girl you destroyed, Garrick. Regret doesn't undo 5 years of pain and suffering and learning how to survive in a world that wanted me dead. Then what do you want? Garrick demanded, his own anger rising now. Why bring an army to my borders? Why threaten my pack? If you want revenge, then take it. Fight me. Kill me. But leave them out of this. How noble, she said mockingly. The alpha willing to sacrifice himself for his pack. How very heroic. She circled him slowly, and Garrick forced himself not to track her movement, not to show weakness. But I don't want you dead, Garrick. That would be too easy. Too quick. She stopped directly in front of him, so close he could feel the heat radiating from her skin. I want you to feel what I felt. I want you to watch everything you built crumble. I want you to know what it's like to be powerless while the world tears you apart. Her golden eyes bore into his, and for a moment, Garrick saw past the rage and the power to the hurt beneath. To the girl he'd broken. Leora, please. I'm giving you one chance, she interrupted. Surrender the Silverfang territory to me. Disband your pack. And I'll let your wolves join mine as equals. No bloodshed. No war. Garrick's jaw clenched. You know I can't do that. Can't? Or won't. I won't abandon my pack. How ironic, she said softly, coming from the man who abandoned his mate. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and damning. Garrick felt something crack inside his chest, the same place where the mate bond had been severed 5 years ago. It had never fully healed. He'd convinced himself it had, but standing here now, facing her, he realized the wound had just been festering. Waiting. Then we're at war, Leora said, stepping back. I'll give you 3 days to prepare. After that, I'm taking your territory whether you surrender or not. Why 3 days? Garrick asked. Why give me time to prepare at all? For the first time since she'd appeared, something soft flickered across her expression. Because despite everything you did to me, Despite all the reasons I have to hate you, she paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. Some part of me still remembers what it felt like to love you. The confession hit Garrick like a lightning strike. And I need these 3 days to kill that part of me for good. She turned to leave, the trees already beginning to part for her. Leora, wait. She stopped, but didn't turn around. Garrick's mind raced, searching for something, anything to say that could bridge the chasm between them. I never stopped thinking about you. Never stopped regretting what I did. If I could go back. But you can't. She looked back over her shoulder, and the moonlight caught the tears shining in her eyes. That's the thing about choices, Garrick. You made yours. Now you get to live with it. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But the bond is dead, she said harshly. You killed it. And you don't get to resurrect it just because you're finally feeling guilty. It's not guilt, Garrick said, and the rawness in his voice surprised even him. It's 3 days, Alpha. Her voice was cold again, regal, distant. Use them wisely. And then she was gone, melting back into the forest with her rogues, leaving Garrick standing alone in the clearing with his heart in pieces and his world falling apart. Because the truth he'd been running from for 5 years had finally caught up with him. He was still in love with her. And she was about to destroy everything he'd ever built. Garrick returned to Pack territory just before dawn, his mind a storm of thoughts and emotions. Nate was waiting for him at the border, along with Theo and half a dozen other warriors. Well, Nate demanded. What happened? What did she want? Garrick's voice was hollow. Surrender or war. We have 3 days. And the Queen? Theo asked. Did you see her? Did you? It's Leora. Silence crashed down like a tidal wave. Nate's eyes widened. What? The Rogue Queen. It's Leora. Garrick met his beta's shocked gaze. She's alive. And she's the most powerful wolf I've ever seen. That's impossible, Theo breathed. She couldn't even shift. She can now. And she can do things I didn't think were possible. Earth magic. Moon magic. Ancient bloodline abilities that shouldn't exist anymore. Garrick ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion and desperation warring inside him. She wants revenge. And she's going to burn the Silver Fang pack to the ground to get it. Nate stepped closer, his voice low. This is because you rejected her. It wasn't a question. Yes. Goddess above, Garrick. Nate looked like he wanted to punch something. What are we going to do? Garrick straightened, his alpha instincts kicking in despite the chaos in his heart. We prepare for war. Fortify the borders. Call in every favor we have with allied packs. And we pray to the goddess that we can survive what's coming. And if we can't? Theo asked quietly. Garrick's jaw set. Then we die protecting what's ours. But even as he said it, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered the truth he didn't want to face. What if what's yours was never the pack? What if it was always her? Day 1. The Silver Fang pack moved like a machine preparing for battle. Warriors trained from dawn until dusk. Scouts doubled their patrols. The women and children were moved to the inner compounds, surrounded by the strongest fighters. Garrick sent urgent messages to allied packs, Shadowmere, Ironwood, Crimson Vale, calling in every favor, every oath, every blood debt owed. But even as the pack mobilized, Garrick couldn't focus. His mind kept returning to the clearing, to her eyes, to the way she'd looked at him with such cold hatred wrapped around lingering pain. Some part of me still remembers what it felt like to love you. He stood in the war room, staring at maps he wasn't really seeing, when a knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in, he called, his voice rough from lack of sleep. The door opened, and a woman stepped inside, someone Garrick had been avoiding for the better part of 5 years. Alara Winters. Well, formerly Alara Thorne. Garrick's mother. She was still beautiful despite her age, with silver-streaked dark hair and the same storm-gray eyes Garrick had inherited. But there was a hardness to her now, a bitterness that had settled in after Garrick's father died and she'd lost her position as Luna. "Mother," Garrick said carefully. "What are you doing here?" "I heard about the Rogue Queen." Ilara's voice was crisp, controlled. "I heard about her ultimatum." "Then you know we're preparing for war." "I also heard a rumor." Ilara's eyes narrowed. "A ridiculous rumor that the Rogue Queen is actually that pathetic Omega you rejected 5 years ago." Garrick's jaw tightened. "It's not a rumor. It's the truth." Ilara's expression twisted with disgust. "That's impossible. That girl could barely stand without breaking something. She was worthless." "Don't." Garrick's voice dropped to a growl, his alpha authority filling the room. "Don't speak about her like that." Ilara blinked, clearly surprised by his reaction. "You rejected her, Garrick. You agreed she was too weak to be Luna. Why are you defending her now?" "Because I was wrong." The admission tasted like ash in his mouth. "About everything." "You weren't wrong," Ilara insisted, stepping closer. "You did what was necessary to protect this pack. A weak Luna would have destroyed us. You made the right choice." "She wasn't weak." Garrick slammed his hand on the table, making the maps jump. "She was sealed. Her abilities were hidden to protect her, and I was too blind and too proud to see past the surface. And now she's threatening to destroy everything you've built," Ilara shot back. "Does that sound like someone worth defending?" Garrick turned away, his hands bracing against the table. "She has every right to her rage. I broke her. I humiliated her. I sent her into the wilderness to die. She's a rogue now, Garrick. An enemy. You can't let sentiment cloud your judgment." "It's not sentiment." He looked back at his mother, and for the first time in years, he let her see the truth in his eyes. "She's my mate. She'll always be my mate. And I destroyed that bond because I listened to fear instead of my heart." Ilara's face hardened. "Then you're a fool. And if you let that bond compromise your duty to this pack, you'll be a dead fool." She turned and walked out, leaving Garrick alone with his guilt and his maps and his impossible choices. Meanwhile, in the rogue camp deep in the Forbidden Forest, Leora stood before her war council. They met in a massive clearing surrounded by ancient trees, where fire pits burned and makeshift shelters housed hundreds of rogues, wolves who'd been cast out, abandoned, or broken by the pack system. Leora had found them one by one over the past 5 years. Some she'd saved from starvation, others from execution. A few she'd literally pulled back from death's door. And in return, they'd given her their loyalty, their devotion, their lives. Now they sat before her, her most trusted warriors, strategists, and friends. Zane Ashford, her second in command, was a massive man with scars crisscrossing his face and a tactical mind that rivaled any alphas. He'd been cast out of his pack for refusing to execute a child accused of being cursed. Maya Rivers, her spy mistress, was small and quick with copper hair and sharp green eyes. Her former pack had tried to force her into a mating she didn't want. She'd killed the male and fled. Luca Stone, her head of reconnaissance, was lean and dangerous, with the ability to move through territory without being detected. He'd been a rogue since birth, abandoned as a baby for being born on a blood moon. And there were others. Dozens of them. Each with their own story of betrayal, pain, and survival. "The Silver Fang pack is mobilizing," Zane reported, his deep voice carrying across the circle. "They've called for reinforcements from Shadowmere and Ironwood. We could be facing 400 warriors instead of 200. "Let them come," Leora said calmly. "Numbers mean nothing against strategy and power." "What about the Alpha?" Maya asked, her eyes sharp. "Did he agree to surrender?" "No," Leora's voice was flat. "He chose his pack." "As expected." "Then we attack in 2 days," Zane said. "We strike fast, hit their weakest points and—" "No," Leora raised her hand, and silence fell immediately. "We wait the full 3 days." "I gave him my word." "My queen," Luca spoke up carefully, "waiting gives them time to prepare. It puts us at a disadvantage." "I know." Leora met each of their eyes in turn. But I won't become like them. I won't break my word just because it's convenient. We attack on the third day as promised. Zane nodded slowly. As you command. Maya leaned forward. May I ask you something, my queen? Of course. When you faced him, the alpha who rejected you, did you feel anything? The question hung in the air. Leora was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire pit at the center of the circle. I felt everything, she finally admitted, her voice soft. Rage, pain, hatred. And underneath it all, she closed her eyes. I felt the echo of what we could have been. Do you still love him? Maya asked gently. Love. Leora laughed, but there was no humor in it. I don't know if what I felt for him was ever really love. Maybe it was just desperation. The hope that anyone, would see me as more than broken. She opened her eyes, and they glowed with golden fire. But it doesn't matter now. Love, hate, they're two sides of the same coin. And either way, that coin is being spent on war. Day 2. Garrick barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Leora, both versions of her. The fragile girl with trembling hands and hopeful eyes. And the terrifying queen with golden wolf eyes and power that could shake the earth. He wondered which version was real. Or if they both were. Nate found him at dawn, standing on the training grounds watching the warriors prepare. You look like hell, Nate said bluntly. Feel like it too, Garrick muttered. The allied packs are arriving. Shadowmere sent 50 warriors. Ironwood sent 30. Crimson Vale is still considering. Not enough. I know. Nate hesitated. Garrick, I have to ask. If it comes down to it, if we're losing the battle, would you surrender to save lives? Garrick's hands clenched into fists. I don't know. That's not an alpha's answer. I know. Garrick turned on his beta, frustration and fear and guilt all bleeding together. I know what I should do. I should fight until my last breath. I should protect the pack above everything else. But she's your mate, Nate finished quietly. A bond one destroyed with my own hands. Maybe. Nate crossed his arms. Or maybe it's just dormant. Like her wolf was. Garrick stared at him. What are you saying? I'm saying you felt something when you saw her. Your wolf recognized her. Maybe the bond can't be killed as easily as you think. Even if that's true, it doesn't matter. She hates me. Does she? Nate challenged. Because from where I'm standing, if she truly hated you, you'd already be dead. She has the power to level this entire territory. But instead, she gave you 3 days and a chance to surrender. Garrick's mind raced. You think she's hesitating. I think she's conflicted. And if there's even a chance, however small, that you can reach her, shouldn't you try? How? Garrick demanded. She won't listen to me. She's made that clear. Then don't use words. Nate met his eyes steadily. Show her. Prove to her that you've changed. That you see her now. And how exactly do I do that with 2 armies about to collide? Before Nate could answer, a commotion erupted near the border. Theo came running, his face pale. Alpha, you need to see this. They followed him to the northern border, where a group of warriors stood in a semicircle, staring at something on the ground. Garrick pushed through the crowd and froze. There, arranged carefully in the grass, were gifts. Bundles of rare healing herbs. Perfectly crafted weapons. Bags of grain and supplies. And in the center, a small carved wooden wolf, the same kind that Leora's mother used to make. What is this? Garrick breathed. They appeared this morning, Theo explained. No one saw who left them, but he handed Garrick a note. The handwriting was elegant and familiar. For the wolves of Silver Fong. Because war is coming, but they don't deserve to starve for their alpha sins. Garrick's chest tightened. She was still thinking about his pack. Still caring about wolves who'd mocked and rejected her. She left supplies, Nate said, reading over Garrick's shoulder. For the pack that cast her out. She's too good for this world, Garrick whispered, clutching the note. Too good for me. Then become better, Nate said firmly. You have 1 day left. Use it. Garrick looked down at the wooden wolf in his hand, a reminder of the girl Leora had been, the woman she'd become, and the mate he'd thrown away. For the first time in 5 years, something crystallized in his mind. He couldn't change the past. But maybe, just maybe, he could change the future. Nate, he said slowly, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to arrange a meeting. Not with Leora. With her second in command. Nate's eyebrows rose. You want to negotiate? No, Garrick's jaw set with determination. I want to understand. I need to know what she went through. What she became. And the only way to do that is to talk to the people who were there when I wasn't. That's dangerous. Everything about this situation is dangerous. Garrick looked at his beta. But if I'm going to face her on that battlefield, I need to know who I'm really fighting. The woman you love, Nate said quietly. Or the monster you created. Garrick's voice was raw. I'm hoping she's both. Because if she's only the monster, then I've already lost everything that matters. Day 2. Nightfall. Zane Ashford agreed to meet Garrick alone at the same clearing where Leora had delivered her ultimatum. The massive rogue stood with his arms crossed, his scarred face expressionless as Garrick approached. Behind him, the forest was alive with hidden watchers, Leora's army, waiting in the shadows. You have 5 minutes, Alpha, Zane said, his voice like gravel. Speak. Garrick stopped several feet away, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. I want to know what happened to her. After she left. Zane's eyes narrowed. Why? Because I need to understand what I did. The full weight of it. You want absolution, Zane said flatly. You want me to tell you it wasn't that bad, that she recovered, that you can be forgiven. No, Garrick's voice was steady despite the turmoil inside him. I want the truth. However brutal it is. Zane studied him for a long moment, then let out a harsh laugh. You really don't know, do you? You have no idea what you sent her into. Then tell me. Zane's expression darkened. The first week, she nearly died 4 times. Rogue attacks. Starvation. A bear that found her sleeping in a cave. She had no wolf to protect her, no pack to fall back on, no skills to survive in the wild. Each word was a knife to Garrick's heart. But she learned fast. Had to. Because out here, you adapt or you die. Zane began to pace, his hands clenching. I found her on day 9. She was half dead, burning with fever, delirious from infected wounds. I almost left her there. One more dead Omega wasn't my problem. What changed your mind? Garrick asked quietly. She opened her eyes and looked at me. And she said, if you're going to kill me, make it quick. I'm tired of suffering. Zane's jaw clenched. She wasn't afraid. Wasn't begging. She was just done. And I saw myself in her. Another wolf the packs had thrown away like garbage. Garrick felt something crack deeper inside his chest. So I brought her to our camp. We had maybe 30 rogues then, outcasts, criminals, the desperate and dying. I thought she'd last maybe a few days before she gave up. Zane turned to face Garrick fully. Instead, she started helping. She couldn't fight, couldn't hunt, could barely stand. But she could organize. She could strategize. She remembered every healing technique her mother had taught her. Within a month, she'd halved our mortality rate and doubled our food stores. And her powers? Garrick asked. Came later. 3 months after you rejected her, she had a dream. A vision of her mother, telling her the truth about her bloodline. About what had been sealed inside her. Zane's expression grew distant. The next morning, she woke up and the ground around her had bloomed. Flowers and vines everywhere, responding to her emotions. Garrick's wolf stirred uneasily. The rejection broke the seal. The trauma broke it, Zane corrected harshly. The absolute shattering of her heart and spirit broke what her mother had spent 20 years maintaining. And when her powers awakened, they came with memories. Ancestral memories of what the first moon bloodline could do. Earth magic. Moon magic. And more. Zane's eyes glowed faintly. She can hear the forest, feel every living thing connected to the land. She can heal with a touch or kill with a thought. She's the most powerful wolf I've ever seen, and she earned that power through suffering. The weight of it crushed down on Garrick's shoulders. For 2 years, she helped us survive. And slowly, more rogues came. Word spread that there was a safe place, a leader who actually cared whether they lived or died. We went from 30 to 100, then 200, then more. Zane stepped closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. And the entire time, she was breaking. Every night, I'd hear her crying. Every morning, she'd pretend she was fine. She pushed herself harder than anyone, never asked for help, never showed weakness. Because she was terrified that if she did, we'd abandon her too. Garrick's hands shook. I did that to her. Yes, you did. Zane's words were merciless. You took a girl who already believed she was worthless and confirmed it. You made her think she wasn't enough. That she'd never be enough. I was wrong. You were a coward. Zane's shout echoed across the clearing. You had a gift from the goddess herself, a fated mate, a bond that only comes once in a lifetime, and you threw it away because you cared more about appearances than about her. Garrick couldn't argue, couldn't defend himself, because every word was true. She still loves you, you know, Zane said, and his voice was almost pitying now. Or at least, part of her does. The part she's trying to kill. And watching her try to rip that love out of herself is like watching her die all over again. I need to talk to her, Garrick said desperately. I need to. No, Zane's voice was final. She gave you 3 days. She's giving you a chance to surrender and save your wolves. That's more mercy than you deserve. I can't just give up my pack. Then fight. Zane turned to leave. But know this, Alpha. When you face her on that battlefield, you're not fighting the Rogue Queen. You're fighting the woman you created when you destroyed the girl you were meant to love. He disappeared into the forest, leaving Garrick alone with the truth. And the truth was unbearable. Garrick returned to pack territory with his heart in pieces and his mind racing. He found Nate waiting in his office, along with someone unexpected. Marin, the pack's eldest elder and the woman who'd revealed the mate bond 5 years ago. Marin, Garrick said, surprised. What are you doing here? The old woman's eyes were sad but knowing. I heard about the Rogue Queen. About Leora. Then you know what's coming. I know what's already happened. Marin stood slowly, leaning on her staff. And I know the truth you've been running from, Alpha. The truth I should have told you 5 years ago. Garrick froze. What truth? Marin sighed heavily. Leora's mother, Alara, came to me when Leora was born. She told me about the bloodline, about the seal. She made me swear to never reveal it unless absolutely necessary. Why? Garrick demanded. Because the first moon bloodlines were hunted to extinction centuries ago. Packs feared their power, their connection to ancient magic. They killed entire families to prevent that power from resurging. Marin's voice shook. Alara sealed Leora's abilities to save her life. And I kept that secret to honor Alara's sacrifice. You knew, Garrick breathed. You knew she wasn't weak. You knew what she really was. I knew she had the potential for power. I didn't know if it would ever awaken. Marin looked at him with ancient, knowing eyes. But when the goddess revealed your bond, I hoped. I prayed that you would see past the surface, that you would trust in the goddess's wisdom. And I failed. Garrick's voice was hollow. Yes. Marin didn't soften the blow. You chose fear over faith, pride over love. And in doing so, you set in motion the very destruction you were trying to avoid. Garrick sank into his chair, his head in his hands. How do I fix this? I don't know if you can, Marin said honestly. The bond was severed. The damage was done. Leora has spent 5 years rebuilding herself without you. But the mate bond, it can't truly die, can it? Garrick looked up desperately. My wolf still recognizes her. Still wants her. Marin was quiet for a long moment. The mate bond is eternal, Alpha. Even rejection can't fully destroy it. It can be buried, suppressed, ignored, but it never truly dies. Not while both souls still live. Then there's a chance. There's always a chance, Marin said. But chance requires choice. And you've already proven what choice you make when faced with difficulty. The words stung because they were meant to. What would you have me do? Garrick asked. That's not for me to decide. Marin moved toward the door, then paused. But I will tell you this. Leora didn't come back to destroy you, Garrick. She came back to test you. To see if you've changed. To see if you're finally worthy of what the goddess tried to give you. And if I'm not? Marin's smile was sad. Then she'll burn your world to ash and rebuild something better from the ruins. She left, and Garrick was alone with Nate and the crushing weight of his choices. What are you going to do? Nate asked quietly. Garrick stood, moving to the window that overlooked his territory. The pack moved below warriors, families, children. His responsibility. His burden. His excuse. I'm going to do what I should have done 5 years ago, he said finally. Which is? Garrick turned to face his beta, and for the first time in 5 years, there was absolute certainty in his eyes. I'm going to choose her. Nate's eyebrows rose. You're going to surrender? No, Garrick's voice was steel. I'm going to fight. But not against her. Not anymore. I don't understand. You will. Garrick grabbed his coat. Tomorrow, when she comes for war, I'm not going to meet her as an enemy. I'm going to meet her as what I should have been from the beginning. And what's that? Garrick's smile was fierce and determined and terrified all at once. Her mate. Her partner. Her equal. And if she kills you for it? Then I'll die knowing I finally did the right thing. Day 3. Dawn. Leora stood at the edge of the rogue camp, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Behind her, her army prepared for war. Ahead of her, somewhere beyond the trees, Garrick was waiting. Maya approached silently, standing beside her queen. The warriors are ready. We can move within the hour. Good. Are you ready? Leora was quiet for a long moment. I've been ready for 5 years. That's not what I asked. Maya's voice was gentle. Are you ready, Leora? To face him again. To potentially destroy him. I have to be. Leora's hands clenched. This is what I've been building toward. What I've been surviving for. Revenge. Justice, Leora corrected. But even to her own ears, the words sounded hollow. Maya touched her arm gently. You know you don't have to do this. We could turn around. Find new territory. Build a life that has nothing to do with Garrick or the Silverfang pack. And let him get away with what he did? Leora's eyes flashed gold. Let him continue ruling, continue living, continue thriving while I'm still carrying the scars? He's carrying scars too, Maya said softly. I saw it in his eyes when you faced him. He's been suffering just like you have. Good. Leora's voice was hard. He should suffer. He should know what it feels like. And then what? After you've made him suffer, after you've destroyed his pack, then what? Will you finally be free? The question hung in the air. Leora didn't have an answer. Because deep down, in a place she refused to acknowledge, she knew the truth. Destroying Garrick wouldn't heal her. It would just leave her empty. But she'd come too far to turn back now. We move at noon, Leora said, her voice ringing with authority. Assemble the warriors. Maya nodded and left, leaving Leora alone with her thoughts and the rising sun. Somewhere in the forest, a wolf howled. And Leora's heart clenched with a pain that had nothing to do with old wounds and everything to do with the battle ahead. The battle where she'd face the man who broke her. The man who, despite everything, she'd never truly stopped loving. Day 3. Noon. The battlefield was a wide clearing between territories, neutral ground where the forest opened up to rolling hills and ancient stone ruins. Garrick stood at the front of his forces. Behind him, 280 wolves from Silverfang, Shadowmere, and Ironwood stood ready. Warriors in both human and wolf form, positioned strategically across the field. But Garrick's eyes were fixed on the tree line opposite them. Waiting. Nate stood beside him, tense and alert. This is insane, you know that, right? Completely, Garrick agreed. And you're sure about this plan? Not even a little bit. Nate let out a breath that was half laugh, half groan. Well, at least you're honest. Then the forest moved. They emerged like shadows given form, rogues pouring from the trees in perfect formation. 200 wolves, maybe more, each one battle-scarred and deadly. They moved with a precision that spoke of brutal training and absolute loyalty. And at their head, riding a massive black wolf that had to be Zane in his shifted form, was Leora. Garrick's breath caught. She sat astride Zane with perfect grace, wearing armor of black leather and silver that seemed to shimmer with moonlight even in daylight. Her dark hair flowed behind her like a banner, and her golden eyes swept across the battlefield with tactical precision. She looked like a goddess of war, beautiful and terrifying and utterly untouchable. The rogue army came to a halt 50 yards away, and Leora dismounted smoothly. Zane shifted back to human form beside her, along with Maya and Luca, creating a protective wall around their queen. Silence fell across the field. 2 armies. 2 leaders. And between them, 5 years of pain and regret and questions that had never been answered. Leora stepped forward, and Garrick did the same, meeting her in the space between their forces. Up close, he could see the subtle changes in her. The confidence in her stance. The power radiating from her like heat. The complete absence of the fragility he remembered. This was no longer the girl who'd trembled before the pack. This was a queen. Last chance, Garrick, Leora said, her voice carrying across the field. Surrender your territory. Disband your pack. And no one has to die today. I have a counteroffer, Garrick said. Leora's eyebrow arched. This should be interesting. Garrick took a breath, knowing this was either the bravest or stupidest thing he'd ever done. Let me fight for you instead of against you. The entire battlefield went silent. Even Leora looked shocked. What? I'm not surrendering my pack, Garrick continued, his voice steady. But I'm offering myself. Let me join your army. Let me fight at your side. And when this is over, when you've taken whatever territories you want, whatever revenge you need, I'll help you build something better. You've lost your mind, Leora said flatly. Probably. Garrick took another step closer. But I'm tired of running from the truth. I made a mistake 5 years ago. The worst mistake of my life. I rejected the woman the goddess chose for me because I was afraid. Afraid of looking weak. Afraid of being vulnerable. Afraid of feeling. His voice grew raw with emotion. But standing here now, looking at what you've become, what you've survived, I realize I wasn't afraid of you being weak, Leora. I was afraid of how strong you'd make me want to be. Leora's expression flickered, just for a moment. You think pretty words can undo 5 years of pain? She asked, but her voice wasn't quite as cold as before. No, Garrick shook his head. Nothing can undo what I did. But maybe, if you let me, I can spend the rest of my life making up for it. By betraying your pack? Leora challenged. By abandoning them the way you abandoned me? I'm not abandoning them. I'm choosing what I should have chosen from the beginning. Garrick's eyes locked onto hers. You. I'm choosing you. Behind them, both armies stirred uneasily. Garrick heard Nate curse under his breath. Heard murmurs of confusion and anger from the Silver Fang wolves. But he didn't look away from Leora. You rejected me, she said, and now her voice was shaking. You broke our bond. You told me I wasn't enough. I was wrong. About everything. Garrick's hands clenched at his sides, fighting the urge to reach for her. You were always enough, Leora. More than enough. You were everything I needed, and I was too blind to see it. You're only saying this to save your pack. I'm saying this because it's true. Garrick's shout echoed across the field. Because I've spent 5 years trying to convince myself I made the right choice, and every single day I knew I was lying. Because my wolf has been howling for you since the moment you left. Because I never stopped. He cut himself off, but the words hung in the air anyway. I never stopped loving you. Leora's breath hitched, and for a moment, Just a moment. Her golden eyes shimmered with tears. You don't get to do this, she whispered. You don't get to show up now after everything and say the things I needed to hear 5 years ago. You're right. I don't. Garrick's voice broke. But I'm saying them anyway. Because you deserve to know the truth, even if it doesn't change anything. It doesn't. Leora's hands began to glow with green energy, vines writhing around her feet. It's too late, Garrick. The girl you rejected is dead. I killed her. And what stands before you now is still my mate, Garrick interrupted. Still the woman the goddess chose for me. Still the most powerful, most incredible person I've ever known. Leora's power flared, the earth trembling beneath them. Stop, she said, her voice desperate now. Stop saying things that make me want to believe you. Why? Garrick challenged. Why won't you let yourself believe that people can change? That I can change. Because I've seen what happens when I trust people. Leora's shout was raw with pain. I trusted my pack and they mocked me. I trusted the goddess and she bound me to someone who broke me. I trusted you and you destroyed me. Tears were streaming down her face now and she didn't bother to hide them. So no, Garrick. I won't believe you. I won't let you in. I won't make myself vulnerable again just so you can shatter me when it's convenient. Then don't trust me, Garrick said. Test me. Challenge me. Make me prove that I've changed. How? Leora demanded. How could you possibly prove? Take my life. The words fell like a bomb. Everyone froze. What? Leora breathed. Garrick reached for the blade at his side, a ceremonial dagger passed down through generations of alphas, and held it out to her, hilt first. You want revenge? You want justice? You want me to pay for what I did? His voice was steady despite the fear coursing through him. Then take it. Kill me. Right here, right now. And my pack will surrender to you without another drop of blood. Garrick, no. Nate's voice came from behind him, but Garrick raised his hand, silencing his beta. Leora stared at the blade, her expression a war of emotions. You think I won't do it? She asked, her voice dangerous. I think you'll do whatever you need to do to find peace. Garrick took a step closer, pressing the hilt into her palm. And if my death is what it takes, then I'll give you that too. Leora's fingers closed around the dagger, and Garrick felt his wolf howl with fear and longing and desperate hope. This is a trick, she said, but her voice wavered. It's not. It's a choice. Garrick's eyes never left hers. 5 years ago, I chose wrong. I chose pride over love. Fear over faith. My reputation over your heart. And it's haunted me every single day since. He placed his hand over hers, over the blade. So now I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing you. Even if it costs me everything. Even if it costs me my life. The battlefield was silent except for the wind. Leora's hand trembled, the blade's point hovering over Garrick's chest. One thrust. That's all it would take. And Garrick saw her considering it. Saw the rage and pain and betrayal warring in her golden eyes. Do it, he said softly. If it'll give you peace, do it. A sob escaped Leora's throat. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I hate you for making me love you. For making me hope. For making me believe we could be something and then taking it all away. I know. Garrick's voice broke. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Leora. I'm sorry for every tear you cried because of me. Every moment of pain. Every second you spent believing you weren't enough. The blade pressed against his chest, right over his heart. You broke me, Leora said, tears streaming freely now. Yes, you made me into this. Into someone who leads armies. Someone who burns packs to the ground. Someone who doesn't know how to be soft anymore because soft gets you killed. I know. Garrick's own eyes were wet now. And I would give anything to take it back. To have been the mate you deserved. The man you needed. Leora's whole body shook. And then, with a cry of anguish, she threw the blade aside. It clattered to the ground between them, useless. I can't, she gasped, backing away. I can't do it. Even after everything, I can't. She couldn't finish. Because the truth was too painful. She still loved him. Despite the rejection. Despite the years of pain and survival and rebuilding herself into something harder. Despite everything. Some part of her still loved Garrick Thorne. And that realization broke her all over again. I hate you, she said again, but this time it sounded like a prayer. A plea. I know, Garrick said gently, taking a step toward her. Don't. Leora raised her hand, power crackling around her fingers. Don't come closer. Don't look at me like that. Don't. Don't what? Garrick asked. Don't love you? Because that's not something I can stop, Leora. Trust me, I've tried. You don't love me, she said desperately. You love the idea of me. The fated mate. The bond. But you don't know who I am now. What I've become. You're wrong. Garrick's voice was certain. I know exactly who you are. You're the woman who saved dozens of rogues from death. Who built an army based on loyalty and care instead of fear. Who still leaves supplies for a pack that treated you like dirt because you can't stand the thought of innocent suffering. Leora's breath hitched. You're the woman who's strong enough to lead armies, but still cries when she thinks no one's watching. Who's powerful enough to shake the earth, but gentle enough to heal it. Who's been hurt so badly that she built walls to protect herself, but those walls are cracking because underneath it all, you still feel. Stop, Leora begged. You're the woman I should have fought for 5 years ago. The woman I should have stood beside. The woman I should have chosen. It's too late. Leora's power exploded outward, vines erupting from the ground, wind howling around them. Don't you understand? It's too late, Garrick. You can't just decide now that you want me. That's not how this works. Then how does it work? Garrick shouted back, standing his ground even as her power raged around him. Tell me, because I'll do it. Whatever it takes. However long it takes. Just tell me there's still a chance. There isn't. Leora screamed, and the pain in her voice shattered both armies' hearts. You killed it when you rejected me. When you looked at me in front of everyone and told me I wasn't enough. She was sobbing now, her power wavering. You killed the girl who loved you, Garrick. You killed her, and I had to build something new from the ruins. And that new person, this queen, she doesn't know how to love anymore. She only knows how to survive. Garrick felt tears streaming down his own face now. Then teach me, he said quietly. Teach me how to help you remember. Because I refuse to believe that love can be killed that easily. The bond is still there, Leora. I feel it. I know you feel it too. Feeling it just makes it hurt more. Leora collapsed to her knees, her power dying around her as grief overwhelmed everything else. Don't you understand? Every time I look at you, I remember what we could have been. What you stole from us. Garrick moved toward her slowly, carefully, as if approaching a wounded animal. Leora. Go away, she whispered brokenly. Please just go away. I can't do this. I can't. But Garrick didn't go away. Instead, he knelt in front of her, close enough to touch but not touching. I'm not leaving, he said softly. Not this time. Not ever again. Leora looked up at him with golden eyes full of tears and rage and longing. I hate you, she whispered for the 3rd time. And this time, Garrick smiled sadly. I know. But I love you anyway. And I'll keep loving you until you either kill me or let me prove I deserve a second chance. For a long moment, they knelt there in the middle of the battlefield, 2 broken people trying to find their way back to each other through years of pain. And then Zane's voice shattered the moment. My queen! We have incoming. Leora's head snapped up, her warrior instincts overriding her emotions. From the south, another army was approaching. And at its head rode someone Garrick recognized with growing horror. Marcus Vale. Alpha of the Blood Moon Pack, the cruelest, most vicious pack in the region. And he'd brought at least 300 warriors. Well, Marcus's voice boomed across the field as he approached. Isn't this touching? The weak little Omega and the Alpha who rejected her having a moment. His laugh was like broken glass. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to interrupt. You see, I've been waiting for the perfect opportunity to take Silverfong territory. And watching you two tear each other apart seemed like the ideal time. He smiled viciously. So thank you, Rogue Queen, for weakening Garrick's defenses. And thank you, Garrick, for being too distracted by your feelings to see the real threat. Marcus's warriors spread out, surrounding both armies. Now, Marcus said pleasantly, I'm going to kill both of you and claim all your territories for myself. Any last words? Garrick and Leora locked eyes. And in that moment, something shifted. The arguing stopped. The pain receded. Because facing a common enemy, they both remembered something crucial. They were mates. And mates protected each other. Always. Leora stood, her power flaring back to life, stronger than before. Garrick rose beside her, his wolf surging forward with lethal intent. And without a word, without any discussion, they moved together. Standing side by side. Just as they always should have been. You made a mistake, Marcus, Garrick said, his voice deadly calm. Oh. Marcus smirked. And what's that? Leora smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing anyone had ever seen. You assumed we were fighting each other. Her golden eyes flared with power. When really, we were just getting reacquainted. And then, together, the Alpha and the Rogue Queen unleashed hell. The battlefield erupted into chaos. Marcus's warriors charged from all sides, a 300-strong wave of teeth and claws and killing intent. They were disciplined, brutal, and utterly ruthless, exactly what you'd expect from the Blood Moon Pack. But they weren't prepared for what met them. Leora's power exploded across the field like a shockwave. The earth itself responded to her command, vines erupting from the ground to entangle attackers, roots twisting around legs and pulling wolves down. Trees bent and shifted, creating barriers and weapons from living wood. And beside her, Garrick fought with a ferocity that reminded everyone why he was Alpha. His wolf surged forward, massive and silver gray, tearing through enemies with precision and power. But it was different now. He wasn't just fighting to kill, he was fighting to protect. Every move positioned him between Leora and incoming threats. Every strike cleared space for her to work her magic. They moved together like they'd been doing this for years instead of minutes. Like the bond between them, though severed and buried, still guided their movements. Zane! Leora's voice rang out across the battlefield. Flank left with Maya. Luca, take your scouts and cut off their rear guard. Her rogue army responded instantly, moving with practiced precision. Nate! Garrick's Alpha command cut through the chaos. Silverfong warriors, defensive formation around the rogues. Protect our flanks. For a heartbeat, his pack hesitated, being ordered to fight with rogues when against everything they'd been taught. But then Nate shifted into his massive brown wolf and held his agreement. And the Silverfong pack followed their beta's lead. Two armies that should have been enemies became one unified force in the span of a breath. Marcus watched from his position on the hill, his expression darkening as he realized his tactical advantage was slipping. Fools, he snarled. Kill them all. I want the Alpha and the Rogue Queen's heads. The Blood Moon warriors pressed harder, their attack growing more vicious. And in the center of it all, Garrick and Leora fought back to back. A Blood Moon wolf lunged at Leora's blind spot, but Garrick was there, intercepting with a devastating tackle that crushed the attacker into the ground. Another came at Garrick from above, but vines shot up at Leora's command, catching the wolf mid-leap and slamming him into the earth. Behind you! Garrick shouted. Leora spun, her hands glowing with green energy, and touched the charging wolf's chest. The attacker froze, then collapsed, alive but paralyzed. Your left. Leora called back. Garrick dodged right as massive roots erupted where he'd been standing, impaling two Blood Moon warriors who'd been converging on his position. They were magnificent together. Deadly and graceful and absolutely terrifying. And watching them, something stirred in the pack bonds, both Silverfong and Rogue alike. Recognition. This was what a true mated pair looked like in battle. This was the power of the bond the goddess created. Not two individuals fighting alone, but a single unified force greater than the sum of its parts. We need to end this quickly. Leora shouted over the sounds of battle. Marcus has too many warriors. We'll be overwhelmed. I know. Garrick shifted back to human form beside her, breathing hard, covered in blood and dirt. Do you have enough power to do something big? Something that'll turn the tide? Leora's eyes met his, and for a moment, the battlefield faded away. I do, she said. But it requires a blood moon ritual. And I'd need a mate's power, Garrick finished, understanding dawning. You'd need to draw on the bond. A bond that's severed, Leora said bitterly, even as she created a barrier of thorns to shield them from incoming arrows. It won't work. What if it's not as severed as we think? Garrick grabbed her hand, and the moment their skin touched, electricity sparked between them. Both of them gasped. The bond, damaged, buried, but still there, flared to life like an ember finding oxygen. Leora's eyes widened. How is that possible? I told you, Garrick said fiercely, his hand tightening around hers. The bond never dies. Not while we both still live. Not while we both still. He didn't finish, but he didn't need to. Leora felt it too. Felt the connection between them thrumming like a living thing, weak but persistent, fighting to rebuild what had been broken. If we do this, she said quickly, if I draw on the bond, it'll make it stronger. It'll start repairing. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything, Garrick interrupted. Do it. Leora searched his eyes for any hint of hesitation. Found none. Then hold on, she said. And whatever you do, don't let go. She closed her eyes, and her power surged. But this time, instead of drawing from the earth alone, she reached for the bond, that thin, damaged thread connecting her soul to Garrick's. And Garrick, feeling her touch on that bond, opened himself completely to her. He felt her then. Really felt her for the first time. Her pain, 5 years of suffering and survival and learning to be hard when all she wanted was to be soft. Her strength forged in abandonment and baptized in blood, an unbreakable core that had kept her alive when everything else tried to kill her. Her love buried deep, protected by walls of anger and hurt, but still there. Still alive. Still hoping against hope that maybe, just maybe, she could trust again. And she felt him. His regret, a weight he'd carried every single day, growing heavier with each passing year. His pride, the thing that had destroyed them, now transformed into something different. Pride in her. In what she'd become. In her strength and power and incredible will to survive. His love, constant and unwavering, even when he'd tried to bury it. Even when he'd convinced himself he'd made the right choice. His wolf had always known the truth. Mate. Always mate. The bond between them ignited. And Leora's power exploded across the battlefield with the force of a supernova. The moon, though it was still daylight, appeared in the sky above them, massive and blood-red and impossible. Leora's eyes blazed pure gold, power radiating from her in waves that made the ground shake and the air itself shimmer. By the first moon, she intoned, her voice layered with something ancient and vast, by the bond of mates, by the earth that remembers, I call forth the awakening. The earth answered. Massive roots erupted across the entire battlefield, but these didn't attack, they protected. They wrapped around Silver Fang and rogue wolves alike, creating shields and barriers. They moved the injured to safety. They formed walls between allies and enemies. And then the roots turned on the Blood Moon Pack. What happened next would be spoken of in whispers for generations. The roots didn't kill. Leora was too precise for that, too controlled even in the midst of such massive power. But they rendered 300 warriors completely helpless in the span of 30 seconds. Wrapped, bound, immobilized. The entire Blood Moon force, neutralized without a single death. Marcus stared in horror as his army was systematically dismantled by a power he'd never imagined could exist. No, he breathed. This isn't possible. The first moon bloodlines are extinct. Guess again, Zane said cheerfully, appearing beside Marcus with Maya and Luca flanking him. They'd used the chaos of Leora's working to circle around to Marcus's position. You're under arrest, Maya said with a vicious smile. For unprovoked attack, attempted murder of 2 pack leaders, and generally being an absolute piece of trash. Marcus tried to shift, tried to run, tried to fight. Luca knocked him unconscious with one precise strike. Much quieter this way, Luca said mildly. Back in the center of the battlefield, Leora's power slowly receded. The blood moon faded from the sky. The roots settled back into the earth, though they maintained their hold on the blood moon warriors. The impossible pressure in the air dissipated, and Leora collapsed. Garrick caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest. I've got you, he said softly. I've got you. Leora's eyes fluttered open, back to their normal gold color now, but exhausted. Did it work? She asked weakly. You just single-handedly defeated a 300-wolf army without killing anyone, Garrick said, something like awe in his voice. Yeah, it worked. Around them, the combined forces of Silverfang and Rogues stared in shock. They'd just witnessed something that would become legend. The Rogue Queen and the Silverfang Alpha, fighting as one, wielding power that shouldn't exist. Proof that the goddess's bonds couldn't be broken by fear or pride or even rejection. Proof that some things were meant to be, no matter how hard you fought against them. Nate approached carefully, still in wolf form, with Theo and several other Silverfang warriors behind him. He shifted back to human, his expression complex. Alpha, he said carefully. What just happened? Garrick looked down at Leora, still cradled in his arms, then back at his beta. What should have happened 5 years ago, he said quietly. We fought together. The bond, Theo said, his eye. Rejection damages it, buries it, makes it dormant, much like Leora's powers were. But it cannot be destroyed while both souls still live and still love. She looked at Garrick and Leora with something like satisfaction. And these two never stopped loving each other, even when they tried. Leora stirred in Garrick's arms, her voice still weak but gaining strength. I still hate you, she said, but there was no heat in it anymore. I know, Garrick said gently. I'm still angry about what you did. You have every right to be. I'm not going to just forgive you because we fought together once. I'm not asking you to. Leora finally looked up at him, really looked at him. Then what are you asking for? Garrick's hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gesture achingly tender. A chance, he said simply. Not forgiveness. Not absolution. Just a chance to prove I can be the mate you deserved from the beginning. And if I say no, then I'll accept it. I'll step down as Alpha, give Nate leadership of the pack, and leave you alone. Garrick's voice was steady despite the pain in his eyes. Because I meant what I said earlier. I choose you. Even if that choice means walking away because that's what you need. Tears gathered in Leora's eyes again. You can't just say things like that, she whispered. Why not? It's true. Because it makes me want to believe you. And I'm terrified of being hurt again. I know. Garrick's thumb brushed away a tear that escaped down her cheek. And I can't promise I'll never make mistakes. But I can promise that I'll never abandon you again. That I'll fight for you, stand beside you, choose you every single day for the rest of my life. Garrick. You don't have to answer now, he said quickly. Take all the time you need. Days, weeks, years, I'll wait. Because you're worth waiting for. Around them, both armies watched in silence. Some of the Silverfang wolves had tears in their eyes, finally seeing their alpha show the vulnerability and strength that true leadership required. The rogues looked at their queen with concern and support, ready to back whatever decision she made. And in that moment, Leora realized something. She'd spent 5 years being strong, being hard, being the queen who never showed weakness. But strength wasn't about never being vulnerable. It was about being vulnerable and choosing to hope anyway. I can't promise anything either, she said finally, her voice trembling. I can't promise I'll forgive you quickly, or that I'll trust you easily, or that this won't be the hardest thing either of us has ever done. I understand. But she interrupted, and Garrick held his breath. I'm willing to try. To see if what's broken between us can be repaired. Hope blazed in Garrick's eyes. Really? Really? Leora managed a small smile. The bond brought us back together today. Maybe that means something. It means everything, Garrick said fervently. Don't make me regret this, Leora warned. I won't. I swear to the goddess I won't. And then, slowly, carefully, Garrick leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. The gesture was simple. Intimate. Not a kiss. That would be too much, too soon. Just a promise. I'm here. I see you. I choose you. And for the first time in 5 years, Leora felt the frozen, broken parts of her heart begin to thaw. Around them, the combined forces erupted in cheers. Because they'd just witnessed something rarer than any battle victory. They'd witnessed 2 people choosing love over pride, choosing hope over fear, choosing each other despite every reason not to. And in a world of wolves where power and dominance often ruled, that choice was the most powerful thing of all. Later, as healers tended to the wounded and warriors began securing the Blood Moon prisoners, Nate approached Garrick. So, he said with a slight smile, does this mean the war is off? Garrick looked at Leora, who was directing her rogues to help with the wounded, both Silver Fang and Rogue alike being treated equally. I think, Garrick said slowly, this means we're going to have to figure out how to merge 2 very different groups into something new. A pack of rogues and a traditional pack? Nate whistled. That's going to be interesting. Probably disastrous, Garrick agreed. Definitely complicated. Almost certainly going to involve a lot of arguments and compromise. Nate grinned. Sounds perfect for you too, then. Garrick laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in what felt like years. Because despite everything, the battle, the uncertainty, the long road ahead, he felt something he hadn't felt since that night 5 years ago. Hope. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the battlefield, Leora found herself standing at the edge of the clearing, looking out at the forest. Garrick approached quietly, careful not to startle her. Hey, he said softly. Hey. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Thank you, Garrick said finally. For trusting me today. For fighting beside me. Thank you for not running when things got hard. Leora glanced at him. This time anyway. It should have stung, but Garrick accepted it. I deserved that. You did. But Leora's expression softened. But you also stood in front of 300 warriors and offered me your life. That took courage. Or stupidity. Maybe both. A hint of a smile played at her lips. The line is pretty thin sometimes. Garrick smiled back, and for a moment, it felt almost like they could be normal. Like they could be 2 people getting to know each other instead of 2 people trying to rebuild something shattered. So what happens now? Leora asked. Now, Garrick said, we figure it out. Together. One day at a time. Together, Leora echoed, testing the word. I'm not used to together. Neither am I. Not really. Garrick held out his hand, palm up. An offering, not a demand. But maybe we can learn. Leora looked at his hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, she placed her hand in his. The bond hummed between them, still damaged, still fragile, but alive. And as the stars began to appear overhead, 2 people who'd been broken began the long, difficult, beautiful process of healing. Together. 2 weeks later, the merged territory was chaos. Beautiful, frustrating, necessary chaos. Garrick stood in what used to be the Silver Fang Council chamber, now crowded with twice as many people as it was designed to hold. On one side sat his former council, Nate, Theo, Marin, and the other pack elders. On the other side sat Leora's war council, Zane, Maya, Luca, and several other rogue leaders. And in the center, trying to mediate between two groups who could barely agree on anything, were Garrick and Leora. Absolutely not, Elder Torvin from Silverfong was saying, his face red with indignation. We cannot simply abandon pack hierarchy. There must be order, structure, rules. Your rules are exactly what drove half of us out in the first place, Maya interrupted coolly. Rules that said some wolves were worth more than others based on their birth. Rules that let alphas reject their fated mates without consequence. The room tensed. Garrick winced, but Leora's expression remained neutral. She'd insisted that everything be put on the table, including the circumstances of how they'd ended up here. Maya's not wrong, Zane rumbled. The old pack system is broken. That's why so many rogues exist in the first place. So your solution is no structure at all? Theo challenged. Just, what? Everyone does whatever they want. We have structure, Luca said quietly. It's just based on merit and mutual respect instead of bloodlines and tradition. That's anarchy, Torvin sputtered. That's survival, Zane shot back. Enough. Leora's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the argument like a blade. Everyone fell silent. She stood, and even the most traditional Silverfong wolves couldn't deny the authority she radiated. We're not going to solve centuries of conflict in one meeting, Leora said, her golden eyes sweeping the room. But we're going to find a middle ground. Because like it or not, we're all one pack now. Are we though? Torvin asked skeptically. No offense, my queen, but you still haven't formally accepted your place as Luna. Without that bond fully restored, without the traditional mating ceremony. Without those things, we're what? Leora's voice was sharp. Less legitimate? Less worthy of leading. That's not what I meant. That's exactly what you meant. Leora leaned forward. You want to put me in a box labeled Proper Luna so you can feel comfortable. But I'm not going to change who I am just to fit your expectations. Garrick watched her with something like awe. This was the woman he'd been too blind to see 5 years ago. Strong, confident, unwilling to compromise her identity for anyone's comfort. However, Leora continued, and her tone softened slightly. I understand that traditions exist for a reason. They provide stability, continuity, a sense of belonging. And I'm not interested in destroying that for people who need it. She looked at Garrick, and something passed between them, a silent conversation built on 2 weeks of late-night talks, careful negotiations, and slowly rebuilding trust. Which is why, Garrick said, standing beside her, we're proposing a hybrid system. Traditional pack structure for those who want it, with ranks and hierarchy and formal processes. But also flexibility for those who prefer merit-based advancement and earned respect over inherited position. 2 systems in one pack? Nate looked skeptical. How would that even work? We're still figuring that out, Leora admitted. But the alternative is forcing everyone to conform to one way of doing things, and that's how we ended up here in the first place. Marin, who'd been silent throughout the debate, finally spoke. The young queen makes a valid point, she said, her ancient eyes thoughtful. Perhaps the issue isn't choosing between old and new, but finding a way to honor both. Easy to say, Torvin muttered. Harder to implement. Most worthwhile things are, Marin replied mildly. The meeting continued for another 2 hours, voices rising and falling, arguments flaring and being tempered. Progress was slow, painful, and frustrating. But it was progress. When the council finally dispersed, Leora found herself alone with Garrick in the chamber. She slumped into a chair, exhaustion written across her features. I'm starting to think war was easier than politics, she said. Garrick laughed, settling into the chair beside her. At least in war, you know who your enemies are. Here, everyone's an enemy disguised as an ally. Not everyone. Garrick's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Some of us are actually on your side. Leora looked at their joined hands, still marveling at how natural it felt now. 2 weeks ago, she could barely stand to be in the same room with him. Now she actively sought out his presence. It terrified her. You're thinking too hard, Garrick said softly. I can practically hear your mind racing. Leora sighed. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. What do you mean? I mean this feels too good. Too right. You standing beside me, supporting my ideas, actually listening instead of dismissing me. It feels like a dream, and I keep waiting to wake up and find out it was all just. It's not a dream, Garrick interrupted, squeezing her hand. And I'm not going anywhere. You say that now. I say that every day. And I'll keep saying it until you believe me. He turned to face her fully. Leora, I know I broke your trust. I know one grand gesture and 2 weeks of good behavior doesn't erase 5 years of pain. But I need you to understand something. His gray eyes were intense, earnest. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. Not just because you're powerful, or because you're my fated mate, or because the goddess chose us for each other, but because I choose you. Every single day, I wake up and choose you. Choose us. Choose this messy, complicated, beautiful thing we're building. Leora's breath caught. And I'm going to keep choosing you, Garrick continued, even when it's hard. Even when we disagree. Even when the entire pack thinks I'm insane. Because you're worth it. We're worth it. Garrick. Leora felt tears prickling at her eyes. I love you, he said simply. I've loved you since before I was smart enough to admit it. And I'm going to love you for the rest of my life, whether you're ready to hear it or not. The words hung in the air between them. Leora had heard them before, 2 weeks ago on the battlefield, whispered in quiet moments since then. But this time, they landed differently. This time, she believed them. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Of what? Of this. Of us. Of letting myself love you again and having you destroy me. I won't. You can't promise that. Leora's voice shook. You can't promise you'll never hurt me, because people who love each other hurt each other sometimes. That's part of it. You're right, Garrick said, surprising her. I can't promise I'll never hurt you. I'll make mistakes. I'll say the wrong thing or make bad decisions. But I can promise that I'll never intentionally cause you pain. That I'll fight for us even when it's difficult. That I'll choose you over my pride, over my fear, over everything else. He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. And I can promise that when I do mess up, because I won't run away. I'll stay. I'll apologize. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right. Leora looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the truth in his eyes. He meant every word. I don't know if I can say it back yet, she said softly. The I love you part. I'm not asking you to. But Leora swallowed hard. I'm starting to feel something. Something that scares me and excites me and makes me want to run away and hold on tight all at the same time. Garrick smiled, and it was gentle and understanding and full of patience. That's enough, he said. More than enough. We'll figure out the rest as we go. That night, Leora couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony of her new quarters rooms in the pack house that had been offered to her, though she still felt strange occupying them. The forest stretched out before her, illuminated by moonlight, and she let her power flow just a little. Feeling the earth, the trees, the life pulsing through everything. Couldn't sleep either? She didn't turn, recognizing Garrick's voice. Too much on my mind, she said as he joined her at the railing. Want to talk about it? Marcus's trial is tomorrow. Garrick leaned against the railing beside her. Nervous? Should I be? The other alphas are coming. They'll be judging how we handle this, whether we have the strength to lead a merged pack. Let them judge. Leora's eyes flashed gold. Marcus attacked unprovoked, tried to steal our territories, and nearly got hundreds of wolves killed. The law is clear. It is, Garrick agreed. But enforcing it against another alpha, that sends a message. Good. The message should be that actions have consequences, regardless of rank. Garrick smiled. Spoken like a true queen. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. Then Leora spoke, her voice soft. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you'd accepted the bond 5 years ago? Garrick was quiet for a long moment. Every single day, he finally admitted. I imagine what our life could have been. How different everything would be. We'd probably be mated by now. Maybe even have pups. The image made something in Garrick's chest ache with longing. Yeah, he said roughly. We probably would. Do you regret it? The path we took. I regret hurting you, Garrick said carefully. I regret the pain and suffering you went through because of my choices. But he turned to face her. I can't regret where it brought us. Because the woman standing beside me now, strong, powerful, confident, she's incredible. And maybe you needed to become her on your own, without me holding you back. Leora's eyes widened. You think you would have held me back? I know I would have. Garrick's smile was sad. 5 years ago, I would have wanted to protect you from everything. I would have tried to keep you safe in a gilded cage, never letting you face challenges or discover your own strength. And you would have resented me for it. He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. But now? Now I know better. Now I know that loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from the world. It means standing beside them while they face it. Leora felt something crack open in her chest, the last wall she'd built around her heart. You've really changed, she whispered. So have you. We both had to break before we could become who we needed to be. That's a depressing thought. Or a hopeful one. Garrick's hand cupped her cheek. Because it means we get a second chance. We get to build something new, with all the wisdom we gained from our mistakes. Leora leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. I'm still scared, she admitted. Me too. But I want this. I want us. Then we'll figure it out together, Garrick promised. And this time, when he leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, Leora didn't. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and tentative and full of promise. It wasn't their first kiss that had happened 5 years ago, before the rejection, when everything was still possible. But it felt like a first kiss anyway. The first kiss of their second chance. The first kiss of who they were now instead of who they'd been. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Leora rested her forehead against Garrick's. I think, she said softly, I might be falling in love with you. Again. Or still. Or, I don't even know anymore. Garrick's laugh was breathless and joyful. I'll take it, he said. However it comes, whenever you're ready, I'll take it. You're really okay with waiting? With taking this slowly. Leora, I'd wait 1,000 years if that's what you needed. Garrick's voice was fierce with sincerity. You're worth every second. And standing there in the moonlight, wrapped in each other's arms, both of them damaged and healing and hopeful, Leora finally let herself believe it. She was worth waiting for. She was worth fighting for. She was worth everything. The next day, Marcus's trial. The great hall was packed. Alphas from neighboring packs had arrived to witness the proceedings, some out of genuine concern for justice, others out of curiosity about the merged pack and its unusual leadership. Marcus knelt in the center of the room, bound by chains of silver and earth magic, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. Garrick and Leora sat side by side at the head of the chamber, with their combined counsel flanking them. Marcus Vale. Garrick's voice rang out with alpha authority. You stand accused of unprovoked attack on 2 sovereign packs, attempted murder, and violation of the Treaty of Neutrality. How do you plead? This is a farce, Marcus spat. You have no authority to judge me. You're a disgraced alpha who rejected his mate, and she's a rogue with delusions of grandeur. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Leora stood, her power radiating outward in a wave that silenced everyone instantly. I am the Queen of Rogues, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Leader of 200 wolves who swore loyalty to me because I earned it. I am a child of the first moon, wielder of ancient magic that your kind tried to erase. And I am the fated mate of Alpha Garrick Thorne. She stepped down from the dais, approaching Marcus with predatory grace. You dismiss me as weak. As nothing. Just like so many others have. Leora crouched down to his eye level. But I'm still standing. Still leading. Still here. Can you say the same? Marcus tried to lunge at her, but the chains held firm. The evidence against you is overwhelming, Garrick said, standing as well. Witnesses from 3 packs. Your own warrior's testimony. The physical evidence of your attack. Under traditional pack law, Leora continued, the penalty for unprovoked attack is death. Gasps echoed through the hall. However, Garrick said, and his voice softened slightly, we are trying to build something new here. Something better than the old ways of violence and retribution. So we're offering you a choice, Leora finished. Accept exile from all pack territories for life, with a blood oath binding you from ever raising arms against another pack. Or face execution. Marcus stared at them in disbelief. You're letting me live? We're giving you the mercy you didn't show us, Garrick said. What you do with it is up to you. For a long moment, Marcus was silent. Then, grudgingly, exile. I choose exile. Wise choice. Leora nodded to Zane, who stepped forward with the ritual blade for the blood oath. The ceremony was quick but binding. Marcus swore on his blood and his wolf never to attack another pack, never to raise an army, never to threaten pack lands again. The oath settled into his very soul. Break it, and his wolf would turn on him, tearing him apart from the inside. You're fools, Marcus said as he was escorted out. Showing mercy to your enemies. It'll be your downfall. Leora's smile was cold. Or it'll be the foundation of something stronger than you can imagine. As Marcus was removed, the visiting alphas began to murmur amongst themselves. Alpha Kendra of Shadowmere stood. That was unexpected, she said carefully. Most packs would have executed him. Most packs operate on fear and dominance, Leora replied. We're trying something different. And what's that? Asked Alpha Roman of Ironwood. Garrick and Leora exchanged a look, then Garrick spoke. Justice tempered with mercy. Strength balanced with compassion. The old ways had wisdom, but they also had flaws. We're trying to keep what worked and change what didn't. A noble goal, Kendra said. But difficult to maintain. Most worthwhile things are, Leora echoed Marin's words from earlier. Still, Roman said thoughtfully, you've proven something today. That a merged pack can function. That rogues and traditional wolves can work together. That's significant. Does that mean you'll formally recognize our territory? Garrick asked. The alphas exchanged glances. Finally, Kendra nodded. Shadowmere recognizes the Silverfang Rogue Alliance as a sovereign pack. And we acknowledge both Alpha Garrick and Queen Leora as its rightful leaders. One by one, the other alphas agreed. And just like that, something impossible became real. A pack built on second chances and chosen family. A leadership based on partnership instead of dominance. A future that honored the past while creating something new. That evening, as the visiting alphas departed and life began to settle into a new normal, Garrick found Leora in the garden behind the pack house. She was kneeling in the dirt, her hands glowing softly as she encouraged flowers to bloom out of season. Creating beauty? Garrick asked, settling beside her. Trying to. Leora smiled. I spent so long using my powers for survival and war. It's nice to use them for something gentle. You're full of surprises. So are you. She looked at him. Offering Marcus mercy when you had every right to execute him? That took courage. I learned from the best. Garrick's hand covered hers in the dirt. You could have destroyed the Silverfang pack. Burned it all down. But instead, you built something better. You showed me that strength isn't about punishment. It's about choosing something higher. Leora's eyes shimmered. You really have changed. We both have. And we're both still changing. Garrick pulled her closer. Together. Together, Leora echoed. And as the flowers bloomed around them, as the sun set over their merged territory, as two broken people held each other in the garden, something settled into place. Not perfect. Not without challenges ahead. But right. Finally, blessedly right. 6 months later. The summer solstice celebration was unlike anything the territory had ever seen. What had once been two separate packs, Silver Fang and the Rogues, had truly become one. The Lunar Haven Pack, as they'd collectively decided to name themselves, thrived in ways no one had anticipated. The transformation hadn't been easy. There had been fights, disagreements, moments when it seemed like the whole experiment would collapse under the weight of tradition versus innovation. But slowly, painfully, beautifully, they'd found their rhythm. Former rogues trained alongside pack-born wolves. Traditional ceremonies were adapted to include new perspectives. The rigid hierarchy that had once defined pack life became more fluid, more merit-based, while still maintaining enough structure that those who needed it felt secure. And at the center of it all were Garrick and Leora. Not as Alpha and Luna in the traditional sense, though they held those titles, but as partners. Equals. Two halves of a whole that had been broken and painstakingly rebuilt into something stronger. Now, as the sun began to set on the longest day of the year, the entire pack gathered in the great clearing for the celebration. Bonfires blazed. Music filled the air, a blend of traditional pack songs and the newer, wilder melodies the rogues had brought with them. Children ran between the adults, playing games that mixed old and new traditions. Leora stood at the edge of the clearing, watching it all with something like wonder. Beautiful, isn't it? Maya appeared beside her, a cup of honey wine in each hand. She offered one to Leora. It is, Leora agreed, accepting the cup. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. That's because 6 months ago, you were planning to burn all of this to the ground, Maya said with a wry smile. Don't remind me. Leora laughed, but there was no bitterness in it anymore. I was so angry, so focused on revenge. You had every right to be. Maybe, but I'm glad I didn't follow through. Leora's eyes found Garrick across the clearing, where he was listening intently to one of the pack's youngest members explaining something with wild hand gestures. I would have destroyed something worth saving. Maya followed her gaze, her expression knowing. You're in love with him, she said. Not a question. Leora's cheeks flushed. Is it that obvious? Only to everyone who has eyes. Maya bumped her shoulder affectionately. It's okay, you know. To be happy. To let yourself have this. I know. It's just, Leora paused, searching for words. For so long, I defined myself by my pain. By my survival. I don't always know who I am without that armor. You're figuring it out, Maya said gently. And you've got time. You've got people who love you. You've got a mate who would move mountains for you. When did you become so wise? I've always been wise. You just noticed. Maya grinned. Now go. Your Alpha is looking for you. Indeed, Garrick had spotted Leora and was making his way through the crowd toward her. My queen, he said with a playful bow when he reached her. My Alpha, Leora replied, mimicking his tone. Having fun. I am now. Garrick held out his hand. Dance with me. Leora's heart skipped. I don't really know how to dance. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. It had become their motto over the past 6 months. We'll figure it out together. Leora placed her hand in his, and Garrick led her to the center of the clearing where other couples swayed to the music. His arms wrapped around her waist. Her hands settled on his shoulders. And they moved together, not quite in rhythm with the music, but perfectly in sync with each other. I have something for you, Garrick said after a moment. It's not my birthday. I know. I wanted to give you this. He pulled back slightly, reaching into his pocket. When his hand emerged, he was holding a small wooden box. Leora's breath caught. Garrick. Open it. With trembling fingers, Leora opened the box. Inside was a necklace, a delicate silver chain with a pendant that made her eyes sting with tears. It was a wolf carved from moonstone, so detailed she could see individual strands of fur. And wrapped around the wolf was a vine of tiny emeralds, growing and blooming. It's us, she whispered. It's us, Garrick confirmed. Your strength. My wolf. Growing together. He took the necklace from the box and moved behind her, fastening it around her neck. The pendant settled against her collarbone, warm despite the cool metal. It's beautiful, Leora said, touching it reverently. So are you. Garrick's arms came around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Every single day, you amaze me. Your strength, your compassion, your willingness to give us a chance despite everything. Leora turned in his arms, facing him. I need to tell you something, she said, her voice serious. Garrick's expression became concerned. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's. Leora took a breath. Everything's right. And that's what I need to tell you. She reached up, cupping his face in her hands. I love you. The words she'd been holding back for months finally freed themselves. I love you, Garrick. Not because you're my fated mate. Not because of the bond. But because of who you are. Who you've become. The way you listen when I talk. The way you stand beside me instead of in front of me. The way you make me laugh even when I'm frustrated. The way you see me, all of me, and choose to stay anyway. Garrick's eyes were suspiciously bright. I love that you admit when you're wrong, Leora continued, her own tears starting to fall. I love that you fight for what's right even when it's difficult. I love that you gave me time to heal instead of rushing me. I love that you're patient and kind and strong and good. She pressed her forehead to his. I love you. And I think I've loved you all along, even when I was trying to hate you. Because my heart recognized its mate even when my mind was telling me to run. For a moment, Garrick couldn't speak, couldn't move, could barely breathe. Then he kissed her. Not gentle this time, not tentative. This kiss was fierce and passionate and full of every emotion he'd been holding back. Love and relief and joy and gratitude and home. Because that's what she was. His home. Around them, the pack noticed and began to cheer, but neither Garrick nor Leora paid attention. They were too lost in each other. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Garrick pressed his forehead to hers. I love you too, he said, his voice rough with emotion. I have loved you since the moment the goddess revealed our bond. I loved you when I was too stupid to accept it. I loved you through 5 years of regret. I loved you when you returned as a queen. And I will love you for the rest of my life and whatever comes after. Pretty sure that's a very long time, Leora said, laughing through her tears. Not long enough. Garrick pulled back to look at her. Leora, I know we've been taking things slow. I know you needed time. But I have to ask. He dropped to one knee. The entire clearing went silent. Leora's hands flew to her mouth as Garrick pulled out another box, this one containing 2 rings made of intertwined silver and gold, with moonstones set in intricate patterns. I know the goddess already chose us for each other, Garrick said. But I want to choose you too. Formally. Completely. Not because I have to, but because I want to. His gray eyes shone with love and hope and barely contained emotion. Leora, Queen of Rogues, child of the first moon, the strongest person I've ever known, will you accept me as your mate? Will you bond with me, not because of rejection or pain or survival, but because we choose each other? Because we choose this life we're building together. Tears streamed down Leora's face. All around them, the pack waited in breathless silence. And Leora thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, fragile, hopeful, desperate to be chosen. That girl would have said yes out of gratitude, out of relief, out of fear of being alone. But the woman she was now? She said yes out of love. Yes, Leora said, her voice ringing clear and strong. Yes, I'll accept you. Yes, I'll bond with you. Yes to all of it, because I choose you too, Garrick. I choose us. Garrick stood, sliding one of the rings onto her finger while she slid the other onto his. And as the rings settled into place, something extraordinary happened. The bond between them, damaged and buried for so long, suddenly blazed to life. Not the painful snap of rejection, but the beautiful, overwhelming rightness of acceptance. The mate bond fully restored. Both Garrick and Leora gasped as it flooded through them, their emotions, their thoughts, their very souls intertwining in a way that felt like coming home after a long journey. Mate, Garrick's wolf sang. Finally. Always. Forever. Mate, Leora's wolf, fully awakened now, responded with equal joy. Around them, the pack erupted in celebration. Zane was wiping his eyes unashamedly. Maya was openly crying. Nate was grinning so wide it looked like his face might split. Even stern Elder Torvin looked moved, because they'd just witnessed something rare and beautiful. Two people choosing love over fear, choosing forgiveness over bitterness, choosing each other despite every reason not to. Well, Garrick said, pulling Leora close as the pack surrounded them with congratulations, I'd say that's a successful solstice celebration. Leora laughed, the sound full of pure joy. I'd say you're right. I love you, he said again, as if he couldn't say it enough. I love you too, she replied. Forever. Forever, Garrick agreed. And as the moon rose overhead full and bright and beautiful, the Lunar Haven pack celebrated not just the solstice, but something even more profound. The healing of what was broken. The triumph of love over pain. And the beginning of a future that was brighter than either Garrick or Leora had ever dared to imagine. 1 year later, Leora stood in the nursery, gently rocking the small bundle in her arms. You have your father's eyes, she whispered to the sleeping infant. Gray like a storm, though I suspect you'll have my stubbornness. Goddess help us all if she has your stubbornness, Garrick said from the doorway, his voice warm with affection. Leora looked up, her smile radiant. She'll need it. Being the daughter of two people who broke every rule in the book. Garrick crossed the room, wrapping his arms around both his mate and their daughter. She'll be perfect, he said. Strong like her mother. Brave like both of us. And loved beyond measure. What should we call her? Leora asked. They'd been debating names for weeks. Garrick looked down at the tiny face, peaceful in sleep, and something settled in his chest. Hope, he said softly. We should call her Hope. Because that's what she represents. What we represent. Leora's eyes filled with tears, happy ones this time. Hope, she repeated. It's perfect. They stood there together, a family built from broken pieces and second chances, looking down at the future they'd created. Outside, the Lunar Haven pack thrived. Former rogues and traditional wolves worked side by side. Children played without knowing the divisions that had once separated their parents. Traditions evolved while honoring their roots. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still disagreements, still moments of struggle. But it was theirs. A pack built on the radical idea that everyone deserved a second chance. That love was stronger than pain. That broken things could be mended into something even more beautiful than before. Do you ever think about how different things could have been? Leora asked quietly. If you'd accepted the bond 5 years ago? Garrick was quiet for a moment, his fingers gently stroking Hope's tiny hand. Sometimes, he admitted. But then I remember something Marin told me once. She said the goddess doesn't make mistakes, she makes journeys. And sometimes the path has to be difficult for us to become who we need to be. You think we needed to be broken first? I think we needed to grow first. I needed to learn that strength isn't about dominance, it's about partnership. You needed to discover your own power, your own worth, independent of anyone's validation. Garrick pressed a kiss to her temple. And now we get to build something together as equals. As partners. As people who chose each other instead of just accepting what was given. Leora leaned into him, feeling the bond hum between them, strong and whole and perfect. I wouldn't change it, she said finally. I wouldn't change any of it. Because it brought us here. To this moment. To her. To us, Garrick added. To us, Leora agreed. And as they stood there in the moonlight, holding their daughter and each other, both of them understood something profound. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect timing or easy paths. They're about people who break and heal and choose to love anyway. They're about second chances and hard-won forgiveness and the courage to be vulnerable. They're about recognizing that the person you need might be the same person you once pushed away, and having the wisdom to fight for them when you finally understand their worth. Garrick had rejected the weak Omega, but he'd fallen in love with the powerful queen. and discovered they were the same person all along, just waiting for both of them to be ready. Oh my goodness, beautiful souls, we did it. We went on this incredible journey from rejection to redemption, from pain to healing, from enemies to soulmates. I need to know, what was your favorite part of this entire story? Was it the reunion? The battle? The proposal? Drop it in the comments below. And if you haven't already subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next emotional roller coaster we're going on together. Thank you for being here with me for every twist, every turn, every tear and triumph. Stories like this remind us that it's never too late for a second chance, that broken things can be mended, and that true love is worth fighting for. Until next time, my loves, remember, you are worthy, you are strong, and you deserve a love that chooses you every single day. Stay magical.